Okay, so hello future engineers. For this discussion video, we have to discuss more about sensors. Okay, so I intend to make this video because I want nga ma-plastar natin about sa sensors because kung lang tawon natin sa module na naging plastar ko sa inyo, there are almost damo-damo gid katama nga types of sensors. And if we have to discuss it isa-isa gid, medyo hindi na naton ma-discuss ang later part of the discussion naton for this subject. So yung intent nga mapili lang kita sang mga essential gid kag mga medyo ginagamit gid ng mga type of sensors, whether it be on your certain nga mga projects in your thesis or even sa industries nga application. So medyo balikan ta lang ang concept and generalize ang concept of sensors. So we know that we are living in the world of sensors. So, pwede natin makita ang different type of sensors even in our homes, in our school, our offices, even sa mga salakyan natin. So, and they are working to make our lives easier. Even, for example, by turning the lights, kung ma-detect niya ang aton nga presence. Pwede man nga i-adjust niya ang certain nga room temperature even to detect sang mga smoke or even fire pa na gani. So or bisan gani in making delicious foods or even coffee para sa aton. Or kung kakita niyo na open ang doors sang malls or open ang doors sang garage, especially kung ma-detect niya ang ara ng imong salakyan or ara ka na for example sa pertahan. So among this and many tasks ang pwede mahimo sa sensors. All this and many other nga mga automation tasks are possible tungod sa ginatawag naton nga sensors. Okay? So before naton balikan gid ang concept of sensors, ano ang mga different types of sensors kag ang applications ini. So mas okay siguro if we take a look back at a simple example of an automated system which is possible because ang ginatawag naton nga sensors. Okay, we have here the real-time application of sensors. So, ang pinagid ka medyo complex pero gi-exhibit sang automation is ang ginatawag naton yung autopilot system sa mga aircrafts. So almost all the civilians and military aircrafts have the feature of automatic flight control system or ang ginatawag naton nga autopilot. Okay, kung tan-awon naton diri sa sining picture, so makita naton that ang ari diri sa sining diagram is you have your sensors, you have your computer, and it produces a certain output. So sa mga sensors, whether it be measuring a certain position, height, speed, temperature, and location. So explain natin isa-isa. So an automatic flight control system consists of several sensors for various tasks like speed control, height monitoring, position tracking, status of the door, obstacle detection, fuel level, maneuvering, and many more. So amo ni ang i-consider naton kung we have to consider sa automatic flight control. Dapat lang tawanin naton ang ining mga task na pwede himuon kung mag-autopilot ka. A computer takes data from all of these sensors and process them by comparing them with the pre-designed nga values. Okay, so pag-detect nimo sa sini nga mga parameters, so sini nga mga data, so ang ini nga mga na-measure natin nga data or ang na-acquire natin nga data amo ning gamiton sa computer in order for it to process and compare them kung ano man ang nakaset sa aton nga pre-designed or nakaprogram nga mga values. Then the computer provides control signals to different parts like engines, flaps, rudders, motors, etc. Kung ano man to ang ma-detect niya o kung ano man to ang na-acquire natin nga data, then amo na dayon ang himuo or ang gamiton nga basis sa aton nga computer kung ano ang control or ano ang possible output nga ipahimo niya sa aton nga mga actuators or sa output naton nga mga components. So the combination of sensors, computers, and mga mechanical parts naton makes it possible to run the plane in autopilot mode. All the parameters that is the sensors, which give inputs sa ating computers, the computers which is considered to be the brains sa ating whole ng system, and the mechanics which is the output of the system like engines and motors are equally important in building a successful automated system. Okay, so kung nakita naton hindi man mag-function ang kabilugan gid nga system if may ara kita absence of one of those components. This is just an extremely simplified version of flight control system. In fact, there are hundreds of individual control systems which uh, perform unique tasks for a safe and smooth journey. Okay, so we have um, discuss already sa previous naton nga mga discussion kung ano ang sensors. So, if balikan naton ang aton nga definition or kung i-recall naton, there are numerous definitions as to what a sensor is. But I would like to define a sensor as an input device which provides an output signal with respect to a specific nga physical quantity nga gina-measure naton. Okay, kung maghambal ko or kung mag-mention ko gani about input device in our definition of a sensor, it means that it is a part of a bigger system. So which provides input to the main control system, whether it be your processor or your microcontroller. Okay, so another nga definition probably or nga pwede naton igamiton to define a sensor is that it is a device that converts signal from one energy domain to electrical domain. So the definition of a sensor can be better understood if we have to take an example or a certain consideration. If you would look sa sining picture, makita din naton ang different types of sensors. So tanan-tanan ni, so these are the pinaka-common nga mga types of sensors nga pwede naton ma-encounter kag pwede niyo magamit sa mga projects later on. Okay, so the simplest example of a sensor is an LDR or light dependent resistor. So very familiar ko with LDR because in our electronics subjects before or electronic subject, yung gamit ko niyang LDR before for a project sa Electronics 1. It is a device whose resistance varies according to the intensity of light it is subjected to. When the light falling on the LDR is more, its resistance becomes very less and then the light is less. Well, the resistance of LDR becomes high. Okay? Kung ang operation I mean sa imong LDR is dependent kani kay light dependent resistor siya. Dependent siya sa amount of light nga ka-receive niya. Okay, so we have meron tadi karon sang definition gid sang LDR. So we can connect this LDR into a voltage divider and along with sa iban pa nga mga resistor and check the voltage drop across the LDR. This voltage can be calibrated to the amount of light falling on the LDR, hence a light sensor. So that simple lang nga idea wherein nag-detect ka lang sang light and then ang ina nga input ang gamiton nimo kung for example para magsiga ang suga kung dulom na so duka mo na nga rationale of understanding ng sensors. So now that we have seen what a sensor is, we will proceed with the classification of sensors. So we have here classification of sensors. Okay. There are several classifications of sensors made by different authors kag different experts. Some are very simple and some are very complex. The certain classification of sensors may already be used by certain mga experts or even mga authors sa mga damo nga mga books in certain man yung mga subjects. But it is very simple classification. But there is a very simple classification of sensors. And this includes number one, whether it be an active or passive nga sensors. So maghambal ta active sensors, they are those which require an external excitation signal or a power signal. Okay? Ga-require siya external na power signal. Passive sensor naman on the other hand, wala ga-requires ang any external power signal and directly generate output response. Okay? So, mo nang inakinalain. Next, we have the other type of classification is based on the means of detection. So, used in the sensor, some of the means of detections are whether it be electric nga, nga detection, biological detection, chemical nga detection, radioactive nga detection. So, depende kung ano da ang iya nga means of detection. Next is classification based on conversion phenomenon. Okay, so hambal natin kagina, based on our definition is that your sensor is converting one form into electric. So, one form of energy domain into electric domain. But silingon, kalabanan nga imong nga gina-measure, gina-convert natin into electric na format. Pero not at all times nga mo na ang function sa aton nga sensor. So this includes sang conversion of your input pakato sa imong output. So the some of the common conversion phenomena are photoelectric, so light and electric, thermoelectric, so heat and electric, electrochemical, electromagnetic, and thermo-optic, light and light. So, or heat and light. So, the final classification of the sensors are whether it be an analog or digital sensors. So, we have analog sensors produce an analog output, a continuous output signal, usually voltage, but sometimes other quantities like resistance with respect to the quantity being measured. Okay, mga continuous valued yung mga parameters. In contrast to analog sensors, we have digital sensors, which work with discrete or digital data. The data in digital signal which is used for conversion and transmission is digital in nature. Mga discrete values ang ginahatag niya. So that is your digital sensors. Sa previous natin nga discussion, I remember damo-damo man kita sa ginplastar nga different types of sensors. And we have here labyanta na lang siya following list of different types of sensors that are commonly used in various applications. All the sensors are used for measuring one of the physical properties like temperature, resistance, capacitance, conductance, heat transfer, and others. This includes you have your temperature sensor, your proximity sensor, accelerometer, your IR sensor, pressure sensor, light sensor, ultrasonic sensor, you have smoke, gas, and alcohol sensor, touch sensor, color sensor, humidity sensor, position sensor, magnetic sensor, you have your microphone or the sound sensor, tilt sensor, flow and level sensor, PIR sensor, touch sensor, strain and weight sensors. So some of this, gin-discuss na natin last time or na-discuss na natin. So, but those discussion is focusing on the more specific to yung approach on understanding the different types of sensors pagidya. So, for example, under sa pressure, may sari-sari pa tatong types of sensors na gin-discuss. Under, for example, sa distance or light damo kasang pwede nga types of sensors nga pwede studyhan. Okay, but for this one, medyo generalized na lang kay para hindi kita magkulang sa time. So we have temperature sensor. One of the most common nga sensor kag very popular gid is ang ginatawag naton nga temperature sensor. A temperature sensor, as the name suggests, senses temperature. It measures the changes in temperature. So there are different types of temperature sensors. So kung makita natin, so LM lang siya, but silingon pwede lang siyang IC lang siya. So like temperature sensor ICs. So LM 35 and you have your DS18B20. So mga amulan ni ila itsura, but they are your temperature sensors. So thermistors, thermocouples, and resistive temperature devices, and etc. So temperature sensors can be analog or digital. In an analog temperature sensor, the changes in the temperature correspond to change in its physical property like resistance or voltage. So coming to the digital temperature sensor, the output is discrete digital value, usually some numerical data, after converting analog value to a certain digital value. So we have temperature sensors are used everywhere, like computers, mobile phones, automobiles, air conditioning systems, industries. So probably damo ka mo din sa madumduman. For example, ang maghambal ta temperature sensors. Kay kung gainit na ang temperature sa sulod sing isa ka room, anong himuon sa imong aircon? So, dapat may action himuon. Another one is, if may detect ang imong temperature sensors, for example, sa in case of fire, ano ang himuon? So that is for your sensor. For example, in your mobile phones. So for example, na-detect niya nga gainit ng imo phone, ano yung himuon? So probably it will send warning or it will flash a warning nga ga-overheat ng imo phone, or even i-shutdown niya or i-shutdown yung imo phone or i-off niyang iba niyang mga devices or mga applications. So background applications sa mga phones. Okay? Same with your computers nga kung mag-init na ginapagana niya, for example, ang imong mga fan sa imong mga laptop or sa imong mga computers. So that very simple nga mga examples nga pastar naton could be applied man even up to the industrial na nga applications. Next one, we have your proximity sensors. So a proximity sensor is a non-contact type sensor that detects the presence of an object. Proximity sensors can be implemented using different techniques like optical, sound, and magnetic. So, pag gusto lang kung ano nga type of applications or depende sa kung ano nga type of application ang ma-fit in your certain nga project or system. So, proximity sensors. So, kadamo isang possible application sa proximity sensors, and this includes your mobile phones, your cars, your certain nga mga industries, ground proximity and aircrafts, and etc. Okay, so very common application of a sensor is nga ginagamit natin sa parking or your back sa back part na balas ng salakyan nga nagahuni kung lapit lang siya sa wall. So that is proximity sensor. Gaka-detect niya nga lapit na sa wall and then ma-alarm siya. Another one is ang kakakita naton sa mga movies nga gahuni kung maigo ka sang certain nga mga laser, optic na siya nga type but that is still a proximity sensor. I remember before, I used this one, your proximity sensor, do kaamo ni siyang application but lain lang galing nga technique ang gagamit ko. With a project, basic na project sa electronics, wherein for burglar alarm na siya or mga pangawat nga alarm kakakita natin sa movie. But during that time, what I used as a sensor is the laser lang gid. Infrared laser lang gid nga normal. And then I have my LDR, light dependent nga resistor or light nga resist. Then I have my mirrors nga nakapalibot on a certain nga balay tong application na yung gamit ko. And then kung for example may maglabay or may mag-agi sa sina nga specific nga area sang balay, automatic it will detect nga or it will make sound nga may ara sang taho. And at the same time, pasigahan niya dayon na suga pag ma-detect niya. So that is your proximity sensors, and you can pair this with even other nga type of sensors. Another one is your infrared nga sensor, IR sensor. IR sensors or infrared sensors are light-based sensors that are used in various applications like proximity and object detection. IR sensors are used as proximity sensors in almost all mobile phones. So, pwede masyapon magamit as your proximity sensor. So, we have this one, so amo nang itsura sa imong IR sensor, but this is just a reflective nga type. So we have there are two types of infrared or IR nga sensor. Number one is your transmissive type, and another one is your reflective nga type. In transmissive nga IR sensor, the IR transmitter usually in LED. So, and the IR detector, usually photodiode na siya, are positioned facing each other so that when an object passes between them, the sensor detects the object. So, gatubangay na sila nga duwa, and then kung may mag-agi behind them, ma-detect nila. So, that is IR sensor. As much as I could remember, there are certain types of smoke detection nga ginagamit nila is IR sensor. So, sa amon nga previous nga company, ang usually gina-recommend na siya namon sa ceiling na siya ginabutang mayara ka duwa ka IR nga atubangay sila or mayara ka receiver and transmitter nga ano na siya gagana lang na siya if ever may ano man daang smoke depende on your control or sa imong ginset sa ila basta kung may smoke nga maglabay or smoke ang iyang ma-detect in between sa imong nga air along a certain industry or certain nga storage area. For example, pag na-detect na niya, then that is the time nga mahatag na siya action. Okay? So, basta may nag-block nga smoke and sa sina nga transmitter kag receiver. Another type of IR sensor is reflective type IR sensor. Okay. So actually do pares-parehas lang ni sila. Ang kinalain lang galing is that the transmitter and the detector are positioned adjacent sila sa isa kag isa facing sa object. When the object comes in front sa imong sensor, ang infrared light halin sa aton nga IR transmitter, i-reflect na halin sa object kag para ma-detect sa aton nga IR receiver. So, ang kinalain lang is the positioning. Okay? So, different positions where IR sensor is implemented includes ating mga mobile phones, mga robots, assembly, industrial assembly, and automobiles. So, amo na ang mga possible application of your IR sensors. Another one is your ultrasonic sensor. So, very familiar ni sa aton nga kit. So, I don't know if makaya tagid i-plastar nga magamit ng ultrasonic sensor all throughout this subject sa sining nga December. Pero if hindi, so let us try to use this in some of the subjects pa in the next naton nga discussion or next naton nga mga subjects. An ultrasonic sensor is a non-contact type device that can be used to measure distance as well as velocity of an object. An ultrasonic sensor works based on the property of sound waves with frequency greater than that of the human audible range. So, ultrasonic gani. It uses the time of light of a sound wave. An ultrasonic measure can measure the distance of the object. The Doppler shift property of the sound wave is used to measure the velocity of an object. Okay, so kung galantaw ka mo sang mga YouTube videos about sa mga samobot or ang mga giinaway na bilang mga car robots. So, usually, may ara na sila ultrasonic sensors. Iba nakaposisyon lang sa sulod. Ang iba, different types, hindi lang amo ang itsura ng ultrasonic sensors. Pero, may ginagamit sila para ma-detect nila kung diin ang kontra. So, especially for autonomous nga robots nga hindi kinahanglan i-control. So, may ultrasonic sensor para ma-detect niya ang kontra kung diin na nayon, ano lang speed sa mga kontra, and then kung ano para ma-send niyang signal sa aton nga Arduino, and then amo na din pag-take action. So, ultrasonic sensor. Okay, so sa aton nga kit, if ever makaya naton himuon, this one amo na aton nga gamiton para ma-detect niya ang mga obstacles nga kag hindi niya mabungguan. So next we have your light sensor. So light sensor, simply lang man ang property of light sensor. It is also known as your photosensors. Light sensors are one of the important sensors. So a simple light sensor available today is the light dependent resistor. So ang muna mention ko kagina. The property of LDR is that the resistance is inversely proportional sa intensity of the ambient light nga gaka-receive niya. Okay, so its resistance decreases and vice versa. By using an LDR, so amo na siyang itsura sa aton LDR basi makakita ka mo dason. So I have a lot of this nga component. By using an LDR circuit, we can calibrate the changes in its resistance to measure the intensity of light. There are two other light sensors or photosensors which are often used in complex electronic systems. May ara kita photodiode kag photo transistors. Pero tanan-tanan sila, they are analog sensors. Okay, another one is smoke and gas sensors. One of the very useful sensor in safety-related applications are smoke and gas sensors. Almost all offices and industries are equipped with several smoke detectors which detect any smoke and sound an alarm. So gas sensors are more common in laboratories, large-scale kitchens, and industries. They can detect different gases like LPG, propane, butane, methane, and others. So ang itsura niya, so amo ni ang itsura sa imong gas sensor. Nowadays, smoke sensors, which can often detect smoke as well as gas, are also installed in most homes as a safety measure. So the MQC Adhesive Sensors are a bunch of cheap sensors for detecting your carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, alcohol, propane, butane, LPG. You can use these sensors to build your own smoke sensor application. Okay, so if hindi ko magsala, kung ang nag-ubra sang kag nagamit ang sininga type of sensor is the batch ahead of us or una or ang 1 year ahead sa amon nga ECEs. So ang ilang gingamit is the LPG leakage nga detection. So amo nila nga gingamit. So gas detection nga sensor. Nga kung ma-detect niya nga may leakage ang LPG, so automatic i-shut off niya ang imo nga LPG nga tank. So doon mo na ang ilang nga ginhimo sila nga thesis before. Another one, very common, is the alcohol sensor. So by the name itself, ang iya lamang nga purpose is to detect kung may presence ang alcohol. Usually, alcohol sensors are used in breath analyzer nga devices which determines whether a person is drunk or not. Okay, nga ginagamit sa aton nga mga law enforcement personnel. So, alcohol sensors. So, this one, pwede man magamit sa mga industry applications to sense kung may presence of alcohol in a certain nga area. So, next, we have your touch sensors. So, we do not give importance to touch sensors, but they became an integral part of our life. Whether you know or not, tanan-tanan nga mga touchscreen devices have touch sensors in them. So, another common application of touch sensors ara sa trackpad sa aton nga mga laptops. So touch sensors, as the name suggests, detects touch of a finger or a stylus. Often touch sensors are classified in resistive and capacitive type. Almost all modern touch sensors are of capacitive types as they are more accurate and have better signals to noise ratio. Okay, so touch sensor, so pwede nga for example dimmer for example nga touch sensor do kamo na, so or any of that, so pwede lang nga amo na nga application. Okay, so pag touch mo then amo na siya dayon ma-create action. Another one is a color sensor. Color sensor is a useful device in building color sensing application in the field of image processing or digital processing, color identification, industrial object tracking. Is a simple color sense which can detect any color and output a square wave proportional to the wavelength of your detected color. Okay, so i-detect niya ang certain nga color. If hindi na same nga color ang iya ma-detect, then amo na siya ang pwede na yun natin magamit nga output and or your data kung ano ang action nga himuon sa mga certain nga system. Okay, so we have also your humidity sensor. If you see weather monitoring systems, they often provide temperature as well as humidity data. So measuring humidity is an important task in many in achieving this. Often all humidity sensors measure relative humidity or the ratio of water content sa aton nga air to the maximum potential of air to hold water. Since relative humidity is dependent on temperature of air, almost all ng mga humidity sensors can also measure temperature. Okay? So, um, kung makita naton so ang ini nga mga type of sensors, they have their specific nga applications, but especially if you will be working with projects later on, kinahanglan naton lang tawon nga basi may ara type of sensor nga pwede lang iya lang man i-perform ang different types of goals naton in a certain nga project. So lang tawon ta lang or basi may ara lang man nga maka-perform balasang different types of sensing sa nga gusto natin matabo. Another one is tilt sensor, often used to detect inclination or orientation. Tilt sensors are one of the simplest and inexpensive sensors out there. Previously, tilt sensors are made of mercury, and hence they are sometimes called as mercury switches. But most modern tilt sensors contain a roller ball. So, this one, pagkabalo ko, or based on sa nagkakita ko sa mga examples ng mga projects on tilt sensors, ginagamit siya for ara ba lang i-control mo ang mga robot cars gamit ng imong kamot. Okay? So, through your hand gestures, you can control a certain nga movement or application sa mga robot cars. But this one, pwede man siya magamit sa mga industry application. So, we will have another nga discussion video on the different types of sensors pa or additional nga data on sensors before kita mag-proceed with the discussion pa naton for sini nga subject. But this is it for now. Thank you. Stay safe. God bless.